Hello students, today you're going to take Cornell notes on force. Go ahead and set up your notebook and then you're going to make up your own questions on the left and you do a summary and an advanced question. If the video is going too fast, just like always, pause it and catch up. Alright? Ready? Okay. The first idea is on force. Force in science is a measurement of a push or a pull. All forces are measured in newtons. So when you're pushing something like this girl here, or you're pulling on something like this boy here, that's a force. And you measure it in newtons. So for her, 125 newtons. For him, 120 newtons. For number one, you can write, what is a force? Or you can use the question, how is force measured? It's measured in newtons. Ready? Moving on to 2. But what is a newton? A newton is just a unit that describe the magnitude of the force. It's named after Isaac Newton, who figured out a lot about motion and forces that we know to this day. Go ahead and come up with your question for 2, and then we'll move on to number 3. Okay, moving on. Number 3. If forces are in balance, the object will move or accelerate in the direction of the greater force. And we talked about that when we talked about the laws of motion. Let me show you a picture. In this image, they're pulling on this piano, pulling and pushing. So the girl's pushing with 125 newtons of force and the boy with 120. Now friction is acting on the piano, but 125 plus 120 would be 245. So it would be moving in the direction, since they're both pushing in the same direction, or pushing and pulling, of 245. But in this next picture, these two dogs are playing tug of war. This happens when you do tug of war. They're doing in opposite directions. This means that this dog is pulling with 80 newtons, but this dog is bigger and stronger and is pulling in this direction in 120 newtons. So because the forces are in opposite directions, you subtract. When they're similar directions, you add. So 120 minus 80, so that means that it would be moving in this direction, because it's the greater number, with a force of 40 newtons. Okay, go ahead and finish copying the number 3 and then come up with your question. Moving on in a few seconds. Alright, the last idea for today. The net force. The net force is what you get after you add or you subtract the combined forces. So when you add 125 plus 120, the net would be 245. So the net is whatever you get from adding all the forces or subtracting the forces, if they're in opposite directions. Go ahead and come up with your question for 4, and then think of a summary of what we talked about in this video, and then your advanced question. Have a good day.